Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are and whenever you are. Welcome to another episode of the Community Live Stream. This is the web series where I, Chuck Tomasi, the ServiceNow guy with the cool bow tie, sporting the spring green, lime green, light green. I don't even know what color this is. It's a very light pale green. Sporting the bow tie this morning, I guide you through one or more questions, issues in our ServiceNow community that is right behind me. Cover the questions, but not only answer them, but take you on the journey of how those answers were achieved. Sometimes it's random knowledge, sometimes it's a little detective work. We don't know. It's always unscripted. It's always an adventure. It's always fun. And thank you for joining me. It is good to see you once again. Happy Friday. This is June 29th, 2018. Let me get on with the introductions, the particulars. And by first, I want to mention that we do this stream on YouTube every weekday, Monday through Friday. If you subscribe to the URL, then you get the information you see there. You get the notifications, theoretically. Not yet, so we'll give everybody a few more minutes while we do the introductions. Still looking for the introduction on my phone. I should get the alert in just a moment. Wouldn't that be fun if it came up in real time? Those are my two lovely daughters in front of the Eiffel Tower, our vacation last month. Still enjoying that. Good morning, Raul. Good to see you today. If you are joining us on Ustream, give me a shout out in the chat room. Love to know where you're from, the regulars, the newbies. When you show up, where you're from, maybe what the weather's like. I don't know. Give me a hi. I'll give you a shout out back. It's always fun. That's what builds this community. It's the greatest community in the world is on ServiceNow. I'll get you the URL in just a minute. But if you subscribe to that channel, you will get that info automatically. And there is more content than just the community live stream. Lots of other good information about HR and CMS and ITSM and all sorts of information that you can make use of in your ServiceNow world. This content primarily targets admins and developers. So if that's you or you know somebody that's you, let them know. Hit that like button if you find something useful in the next hour or so that we talk and we discuss and we go through this stuff. You go, wow, I learned something. Click like, and it's very helpful to others as they browse around and say what's new. We also do this on Twitch. If you happen to be watching over there, thank you very much. It is a wonderful time. I just got a live video message nonetheless, about a half hour ago from a friend of mine in Washington, D.C., my co-author of Podcasting for Dummies, who said, I have some information about Twitch and ServiceNow, so we're going to be talking tomorrow. I'm curious what he has to say. There may be some changes coming up. Don't know. We'll find out, because once I set that Twitch station up, I really haven't done much. So there's probably an opportunity to do things over there that might help. So look for some changes, potential changes. I listen. I don't always do. We'll see what he has. I respect the man very much. So looking forward to seeing that. And after Twitch comes, drum roll please, it's the community. Yes, if you've got a question, it goes beyond just saying hi, the weather, whatever in the chat room. If you ask a question like that, I'm going to have a tough time answering it, and the viewer is going to have a tough time finding it later, or somebody who's searching the community will have a tough time finding it later. So please ask those questions in the community over at community.servicenow.com. Example being, hey, I've got a business rule that doesn't do what I want. I've got a script that isn't working right. What is the best way to do XYZ? Those are community questions where other people can participate in them, provided you put them in the right forum, and other people can find them. That's the whole community concept, right? We're all working together to get you a solution, and anyone else who's coming along with the same question or issue can find that much easier on a system of record like the community at community.servicenow.com. Make sure that you visit there, join there. It's a great time. The other resource that I encourage you to use more and more every day, as I do, is developer.servicenow.com, where you can get a free personal developer instance running our latest software releases. Kingston, Jakarta, Istanbul. We name all of our software releases after the letters of the alphabet, where the letter is the first letter of a city. So I for Istanbul, then came J for Jakarta, then comes K for Kingston. Next will be L for London coming up in Q3. So look for that. We're very excited about some of the features that are coming out. I've got more content for you about London. But back to developer.servicenow.com. You can also find, let me show you that, the scripting APIs under API. Let's just go to server, for example, and it will list all of the server APIs, both scoped and legacy. So you can find all that information. You can get yourself learning paths, so learning plans, I should use them by the right name. Learning plans. So if you've never built a ServiceNow application before, you can do that for free on developer.servicenow.com. I'm still curious if that notice came through. Still no notice. Curious. Good morning, Mohammed from Egypt. Oh my goodness. I think that's our first Egypt person I've seen, or at least that's stuck their hand up. Rahul is in India, so hope you had a wonderful Friday. Enjoy your weekend. Have a good time. Good time. It's morning for me. It's about just after 6 a.m. in sunny Phoenix, Arizona, here in the Binary Studio. I don't know if I think I mentioned that once before. Where else are we going? We've gone to the developer site. That means we also have, let's clear the title and mention that we've got some meetups coming up. These are also available at the developer site, but we coordinate those through meetup.com because it's very easy, very familiar for people to find that, and for other developers to find us at meetup.com/pro/service. You see the URL down there. My head's not in the way. You go there, you find out what meetups are coming up. This list is a bit obsolete. I do this on Sunday night, so Sunday night I'll be doing another one for you. Next week is a holiday here in the United States, so I won't be doing a Wednesday or Thursday show. But you can look for me Monday, Tuesday, and Friday if everything lines up, if I'm not sick, if I'm not called away on an emergency business trip, whatever, I will be here for you with more of this random, hopefully helpful content on the community live stream. Just subscribe to that channel. Also want to remind you that we have some other events over at the events page on servicenow.com. You can find those. Various topics, various things might interest you, might interest one of your coworkers. Be sure to share the URL and say, you know what, there are webinars going on all the time. I just got pinged yesterday to do another one in August. So I think I've got 2 coming up. Not sure what all my schedule is, but Q3 is getting busier and busier and busier. It's crazy. So I don't know what that's going to do for the impact of this content, but as long as I'm at home and I have the ability to get my backside out of the bed and find something to talk about on the community, which never seems to be a shortage of issues on that, I will be here for you. One other reminder, speaking of webinars, we do have the July 10th webinar from our Tech Now series that we've been doing for about 5.5 years. We're going to be talking about the script debugger in that came out in Istanbul. So it's been out for about 1.5 years. And if you haven't used it, haven't explored it, I encourage you to do so. It'll make your coding much more faster. You'll be able to, as it says, save time and headaches and all that good stuff by using the script debugger instead of putting in a bunch of info statements, debug statements that you go mine out of the log. So I encourage you to do that July 10th. Sign up at the URL on the bottom, bit.ly/TN54reg. I made it. I should know what that URL is. Okay, onwards and upwards. Let's go to the community, see what we've got. Oh, let's do the recap first. Recap from yesterday or recent messages that I found interesting. Good morning, Carolyn. Good to see you again. Let's cleanse the old vocal cords there before we get going too far. And follow-up from earlier. There was a message I saw this morning that was a follow-up. Michael Ritchie, one of my coworkers, very smart man. I look to him for a lot of resources. He wants to put up a message in the attachments box that says, hey, be careful about putting PII data. So Michael posted a solution, very smart guy. He's got the XML in here. He says, you can modify this UI macro. It's very easy to do. Once you modify it, though, it's yours. This is one of those out-of-the-box things. So use with caution. But if the person really wanted to do that, he included the code here that said, here it is. I'll even put that in the text editor to make it easier to read for those of you at home playing along. He just put in a TR, which is a table row, if you don't know your HTML. And I don't know why there's not a TD in here, but so be it. And then he put in node, please be, This editor does something like that. Please be mindful of uploading attachments with PII data. Now, this is technically correct, but not best practice. Best practice, this is a hard-coded string. And anytime I see a hard-coded string, whether it's a name or SysID or a nice helpful message like this, my brain goes, hey, what's going to happen when this particular organization says, that's all great, but what about our Spanish-speaking people? Or we've just done an acquisition in Czechoslovakia. Okay, how do I translate that? That means you got to go back. You've got a hard-coded string. It is what it is, and it's going to be displayed that way. There is no translation that goes on here. What you could do is, number one, gs.getMessage. Excuse me. Wow, cobwebs this morning. gs.getMessage is your friend. And because this is in a UI macro, we enclose it in the $curly brace notation so that it tells the jelly processor to go get it. We close out the gs.getMessage and we put a call in there. Now, once that's in there, you need to take, this is going to do it. It says, do I have a translation for this message? If I do, I will replace this. This becomes the key. If there is no translation, it will use this as the message. Now, what that looks like from the system standpoint, I'm going to go to my personal developer instance that I got from developer.servicenow.com. Ding! Not that I'm advertising or anything, but underneath, System UI Messages, always on the bottom. System UI Messages is a translation table for those types of messages where you use gs.getMessage. And you can use that in any server-side script, even in these UI macros and UI pages if you put it in a $curly brace. This is one of the earliest things I learned about for translations when I was looking through annotations going, what if I want my annotations translated? Okay, so I would go through here and say, is there any message that, at the moment, I don't have any plugins turned on, so I don't have any other translations. I did until I z-booted my instance earlier this week, so perhaps I'll turn the Spanish plugin back on. It makes for good examples when I do things like this. But it looks through and it says, do I have this? Like here, invalid configuration, unable to process breakdown indicator. A lot of these often have parameters. Admin privileges required to change group memberships. These are the keys. You can see it's under the key column that the system uses to look up the translation, which is in the message column. So obviously, English is a one-for-one match. But if I were to have a Spanish, I would have the same key. The language would say Spanish, and then the message would be the translation of that. So if somebody came along and said, hey, that's great, but can you make it Spanish? All you have to do is create a new record, put this in as the key, has to be the same string, so don't change your code ever again. If you need to change the message, you would change it down here, and then it would do that lookup. This is a minus material, I will call it. In my book, I don't, because most people will say, there, I wrote the gs.getMessage, I'm done, and they will leave. They won't come back and do this. This is the missing step. And it's often because they don't think in time that, oh, I needed that translation. So what happens is they get the Spanish or Portuguese or German or whatever language added in. They turn on the plugin and they discover, hey, this wasn't translated. Then they go back to the messages field. They go, oh, I need a translation in the message. What was the string? What was the key? Where was that used? And it becomes this looking for something that's not there, which is harder than looking for something that is there. So what I usually do to make this really dirt obvious is I take this out and I will say something like attachment PII warning. Now, what does it do if there's no key in the messages table? It prints that. And someone's going to see that on the screen and go, what? That is horrible. Okay? You might even start it with MSG so you can tell yourself, oh, that's a UI message. So any tester, any user that sees that knows that you screwed up and you didn't put in MSG attachment PII warning. Now you have this entry in the message record that does the translation for you. And what's better is when you go to, this is where it becomes A minus material to A plus material, doing the old grade school grading thing if you didn't catch that. What becomes better is you can get the message. You say, just go through my application and find all the things that start with MSG underscore that are in English only. And you export that, you've got a spreadsheet, you can do the translation, you can re-import it back into the messages file in Portuguese, German, French, whatever the language is you need, and you've got that translation. It's very easy to do an export of the elements you've got because somebody spotted that and went, you know what, you're missing a message. They can do that in test for English before it gets to production, and you've already got your English translation done. Therefore, you're going to have an easier time translating it to other languages because the entry is already there. Now, if I were doing a scoped application, I often put the scope on the front myself. It doesn't do this automatically. This is in the global scope, but I would say XNC Tech Now. And then now I know all of the messages that belong to that application. Your translation becomes pretty easy. Pretty easy. We do have in the pipeline, it's pretty far down the road right now, but at least one, if not a two-part series on doing translation localization on the Tech Now series. So look for that in the future. I don't have a date for it yet, but it is probably going to be sometime in 2019. We do have a pretty full calendar and a lot of topics. If I were doing this weekly, I'd say it's probably coming in October. So lots of stuff in the pipeline, but it's not October and it's not 2019. So let's move on. So hopefully that made sense. That was the one thing that I saw in the community this morning that I said, you know what? I don't think I've talked too much about this and it might be useful. So if it is, go ahead and click that like button if you want to learn more about translation. If you've got an organization that has multiple languages, all the better. Might be something you want to know. Good morning, Raul. How to show edit UI macro, UI action knowledge article page for knowledge manager and knowledge author. Not sure I understand the question, but I'll tell you that is definitely something that should be asked in the community. How do you show edit UI macro? Again, you give me a step-by-step of what you're looking for, or you mentioned something about knowledge manager and knowledge author roles. Those people do not have edit access to UI macros. Only admins have access to edit UI macros. That is just the way that the system is. I would not want my knowledge managers messing around with the jelly code in those macros. Too dangerous. Too dangerous. All right, let's do a quick refresh on the screen and get started with some new content. Let's see what the new content is. TGIF, everybody. Put that on your shoes. It stands for toes going first. Convert video. Well, I happen to be a little adept at videos and conversion, but I don't think ServiceNow is. I recently found a new job, which I dreamed about for a long time. I needed a program for converting videos from YouTube to this site, FLV Converter. Everything works perfectly and quickly. I never thought that there are such links. Tell me, please, someone who used similar programs, or I use something better. Are you just looking to download it? Are you looking to download? This isn't really a ServiceNow question. I don't want to be mean about it, but this isn't a ServiceNow question. Is there a ServiceNow question in here? You might have better luck with this on a YouTube forum. In any case, there are lots. I'm going to be. Are you looking to download the video? If so, what format are you interested in? I've seen a number of sites where you can download it as an MP4, an MOV. You can even just download the audio. I do that sometimes when people post royalty-free music. I download the MP3 and then I use that in another in a video or something as bed music. Snow to Soulman integration. Not sure I know what Soulman is. Let's find out. Has anyone done a ServiceNow incident integration with SAP Soulman? Nope. But I'm going to subscribe to find out more about it. Standard questions you usually run into when you do an integration. If you don't already have one built out, the integration, there's a series of questions that always run through my mind that I should probably just make a standard form out of these. It's what are the capabilities of the other application? So in this case, the SAP Soulman. Does it do web services? Do I have to have a VPN? Is it internal? Is it external? Are we looking to do one-way integration, two-way integration? All of this comes into play. What is the schedule? Is it scheduled or is it real time? Is it in batches? Is it single record? What does the architecture of this look like? Before you dig in and start to find a solution, understand what the capabilities are. It's as different as if I have a car and you need a ride. Well, you may also need to haul 2x4s, some lumber. Well, my car doesn't fit lumber. What are your requirements and what are the capabilities? You have to understand all that before you do this integration. So if you're asking about an integration and you don't know what that other application is, work with either the vendor or your internal subject matter expert. They can often help. You may need to get a mid-server involved if it's on-premise and ServiceNow is not. There's all kinds of variables that come in. Integrations in and of themselves are, at least I don't think so. I don't think they're that complex. Once you understand what those linkages are that you can take advantage of. And then you get into what are the file formats? What's the data we need? Is this a string? Is this a date? Does it need transposing? All this different information that you get down to in the details once you have the ability to exchange that information. You could be doing this via email. Email is a type of integration. It's a rather grassroots integration, and it's a little difficult to manage sometimes, but it is an integration. Think about when you email back an approval. Okay? ServiceNow sends out an email and says, do you approve? Click this link. It generates a mail, sends it back, and it goes, oh, Chuck approves. It says so right here in the subject. Therefore, the system has integrated with, technically Outlook, I guess, but it integrated with you. Remove personally identifiable information during system clone. All right, what are we dealing with? It might be something that you want encrypted, and then you don't give the encryption keys to your dev instance. The company I work for is nearing go-live date for ServiceNow. As both a business and technical SME for the project, I've been working on some policies and procedures to be used going forward within our company for development, administration, etc. Our company is pretty big on protecting information these days. What company isn't? And one thing that keeps going through my mind is how to handle the cloning of production back into development instances. I've done system clones before, and I can see that there's the ability to run scripts as part of the clone, as well as exclude tables. Before I go reinventing the wheel, has anyone made a pretty robust way of cloning production instance to a development instance, but altered personal information in a way that there is no longer sensitive? For example, taking incident, we want to alter the first and last name, phone, email, and the first name, last name, phone, email, etc. on callers to be from selected list or maybe 100 personas. Then during the same with incident title and description so that the quantity of data, the sys-ID relationship set all remains, but the specific information itself is lost. This is what we currently do for some other in-house applications as per the requirements of our information security team. The first thought that runs through my mind is your admins and your developers are in they're in a privileged position. Okay, you have to be able to trust them. Now, if you have personal information like credit card numbers or insurance or some secure information, consider using encryption. And then don't copy over those encryption contexts or the encryption keys, whatever it is that gets that encryption done based on the type of encryption. We don't talk about it too often, but if you're using encrypted fields, then you leave off the contexts. If you're doing edge encryption, then you don't hook it up to that particular. You don't push those set of keys to your dev and subdev and your subprod instances. But these people who are doing development have a position of privilege. They often have the ability to get access to data that normal human beings wouldn't. Get them to sign an NDA. I know that's not the end result. There's some things you can't and don't try to fix with technology. Granted, technology is a great enforcer, but there has to be a level of trust there. And if the trust is violated, then there has to be consequences. That's just corporate policy. If your people are that susceptible to leaking information, or if you've got salaries, encrypt it. Be cautious of what you're putting on ServiceNow. That's a lot to be said, and I may come back to that one just to flesh it out. But another way would be if they just wanted 100 records. Oh, you can't do this. It gets into the discussion we had yesterday. If I've got 5,000 people in my sysuser table and I only take over 100 and I truncate that field, or truncate that record, what's that going to do? They could do something like you said, like they wrote, put in a script that runs after the clone is done and scramble the first name and last name and make that anonymous. You're still going to have a reference to all the information that person has. So I don't know how anonymous that really is. If, let's say my corporate policy is to give laptops an ID like Mac-Tomasi is mine. That's not what mine is, but I own that and I have a user record on that asset. Well, then it's not a big leap and a jump to go into the asset table and see who owns Mac-Tomasi and it says Grufer Mirkasabala because the name is all scrambled. I kind of know that's the name for Chuck Tomasi. So I don't know that that's really going to get you what you want. If somebody's clever enough, they can figure it out. They could take the sysid out of dev, go into prod, look for that same sysid. You can filter any list by sysid and find that record. So it feels a bit sketchy to me as to how they're doing this. Good morning, ServiceNow fan. That one concerns me. I'm going to leave that one up and I might answer it offline. I don't want to sit here and type all morning for that. I'll see what other people are saying as well. Recommendation for custom tasks. This is HR service delivery. I'm not big on HR, but let's see. Sometimes HR service delivery includes developer stuff. I'm building out the process to manage an investigation into an employee for fraud, privacy violations, etc. At the end of the process, the investigator writes up a recommendation on his or her findings. This involves information such as outcome, substantiated or not substantiated, action, warning, suspension, etc., re-education, report obligations, any recommendations on how I should add this to the case form. I was thinking of adding the fields, but concerned the form will be too long. Then thought about a custom task, but I've never done this before and don't know how it's done. Open to any ideas, thanks in advance. My recommendation is build a new table. Recommendation is to have a table of these custom tasks, and each of them has fields such as name, type, okay, this would be your action, outcome, re-education, etc. User types, a description, perhaps, and case, which is a reference to the parent case. Now you can add a related list of tasks to your case form. This could be a list of 1, or a list of 20. It's up to you and very flexible. Maybe you can put in a description, more verbose. description of the type. Gives them some ideas. More info on creating tables. Let's go to the docs. 2 tabs over. We'll click Klingston. Klingston. Tables. Table flattening task module. Table administration. Table is a collection of records. That's a wonderful thing. We even have a video. Makes me wonder, is that one that I narrated? That looks really familiar. I haven't narrated a video in a long time. Okay, recommendation for custom tables. Docs, table administration, put in a good link to make it really helpful. Paste. There we go. See, I'm not part of the HR world, but you never know. Sometimes they ask questions that we can provide an answer. Hit that bell. Discovery of servers and network devices. IT service management. Discovery should really go under IT operations management, but let's see what they've got. My ITOM discovery knowledge is a bit rusty. Let's see. Hi all, can someone share the discovery process of servers and network devices in ServiceNow? How to add and what communication will happen in network layer, i.e. TCP or UDP and port numbers. I'm going to start you out with the discovery process. Top level page. Okay, discovery basics. There we are. We have 2 different types, horizontal and top down. Okay. I'm not going to bag on them for putting this in ITSM. ServiceNow offers a product, offers a couple different products for doing discovery of devices. Each device, each hardware device should be IP addressable. Will UDP work? No, UDP won't work because it needs an acknowledgement back. Or will it? Yeah, it will. I'm trying to remember. Gosh, it's been so long. Can we discover UDP? I don't know that there are UDP devices out there. UDP is usually what a device tells you. I'm showing my age here. Good morning, Steve. What are we doing this beautiful Friday? We are struggling to remember our legacy knowledge on discovery. I recommend rather than type this all out in this posting, I defer to our wonderful documentation to help you understand the basics. I think there's some videos in there too. Docs, discovery, basics. 2 links in one day. You want a discovery primer? Okay, short answer is there's 2 different types of discoveries. There's horizontal and then there's top-down is what we call it. Top-down was, it came along in Eureka, fully integrated in Fuji and Geneva, if I remember right. Trying to do my history here. Discovery, the horizontal discovery has been around since 2009, 2010. This predates the whole Aspen, Berlin, Calgary naming scheme. And the gist of it is, with the horizontal discovery, you give it an IP address range. And you say, hey, go discover everything over there on my 172.21 network. Find anything that responds to a WMI query. Wow, that came out, and I was trying to think of it, and my brain was on one acronym, and my mouth said another. And my mouth won. That was weird. WMI, SNMP, or what's the third one? SSH. So it goes around and it tests the IP addresses in that one by one. I mean, it will, if you give it 64,000 addresses, it's going to go, number one, do you speak any of these three protocols? And it says no. Number two, do you speak any of these protocols? No. Number three, do you speak any of these protocols? Yes. And it makes a note of that and it comes back later and says, okay, number three, after it gets this list of all the IPs that have responded to one of those, so number three, you say you speak WMI. I therefore think you are a Windows machine. So let me ask you another question. What is your host name and what is your operating system? It tries the credentials and then logs in. It does this in a very prescriptive, staged way so that first to find out, is anybody home and what do you speak? Then it comes back and says, oh, I see you speak SSH. You might be a Linux machine. You might be a Unix machine. You might be the management address to a router. I don't know. It's something that speaks SSH. And then it uses a little more information to try and classify that information. And once it classifies it, then it goes back and does the exploration of it in deep detail. It says, you're a switch, therefore I'm going to ask you these questions. Or you only speak SNMP, therefore, based on this OID that I got back, you are going to be referred to with, I'll ask you these other questions or send you other OIDs to get this deeper information. It's only asking the right information to the right targets. It will ask a completely different set of questions to a Sun Solaris machine, for example, versus, I know I'm dating myself a little bit with that example, versus an IBM AIX machine. Two different operating systems, two different sets of questions, two different sets of commands, and we're not just throwing a book of stuff at it and going, here, answer all this. That's a waste of time, waste of resources. So our horizontal discovery is very prescriptive in how it asks each target information about that. And when it gets that all back, it then fills in all the CI details. Top-down discovery is a little bit different. There you start, instead of getting all the printers, all the servers, all the applications that run on the servers, all of the, all the stuff in this IP range, and putting it into the CMDB, and then it hooks it up on the back end where it can. It says, oh, I see this application, this machine is talking to this port on this other machine. I'm going to hook those two together. And it figures out that a database is running on a server and that an application is accessing the database. And it does all that through this TCP port mapping that it gets during the discovery process. That's the horizontal discovery. Top down starts with an entry point. And you say, this is the entry point to my procurement system. Maybe it's an IP address, maybe it's a host name, whatever it is, and a port. And you say, this is how people access it. This is how the administrators access it. And then from there it says, who are you and who do you talk to? Well, I'm a load balancer, and I talk to these 4 nodes. And then it keeps a note of that, and it goes back and says, node 1, who are you? And it gives all that information, and who do you talk to? And it only gets the information it needs to build that out. So it's not asking everybody on the network. It says, oh, therefore, node 1, you talk to A, B, and C devices. Node 2, you talk to A, B, and C devices. And the load balancers all go down. You get just the map for that particular business service. So it's business service. I don't have any printers in there unless, of course, there's a configuration file in there that says, oh, hey, we want to map these printers. They're part of the business service. I can link to external services, maybe as part of that business service that's being mapped in a tree structure. One of them points out and says, you know what, I get this information from our third-party procurement system. You don't necessarily have the credentials to log into the third-party system and do more exploration, but you can reference it. Sorry again for the cobwebs. But that's the difference between horizontal and top-down discovery. They operate in 2 different methods, but the ultimate goal is you have information in your CMDB that is intelligent, that you can work with, that you can identify then. Once you've got these things hooked up, you can identify who's responsible. If we need to take it down for maintenance, hey, I'm doing a patch on this one system. Does it matter? Well, it's a load balancer. You tell me. Maybe, maybe not. Maybe we don't even need to notify anybody. If we're patching things in series, the load balancer will go, that one's down, let's go to another one. And balance everything out. If you've got 4 nodes, you can take one down, nobody's going to suffer. You don't necessarily need a maintenance window, or you need approvals. You can use that tree structure, you can use the connections in that CMDB to identify risk, to identify ownership, approvals, all that good stuff. So that is my 5 or 6 minute spiel on discovery. Let's go back to this information. I'm going to refresh this one more time. Wait for it, wait for it. Nothing in the inbox. I always like to keep an eye on that upper right corner. Import data set roles issue. Let's see what's going on here. Hello all, I've created an import set table and transform map that works perfectly well. Good. Problem solved, right? Well, however, when I try to assign a role to one of our engineers to allow this person to load data, the only role that seems to work is import admin. That makes sense. From what I have read, the import set loader role should accomplish this, but when he tries to load an existing table, he is unable to see the import set table I have created for him and grant access to. I should not have to give him a role of import admin to load data from what I have read. Do you have any suggestions? It sounds like he's loading, but he just can't see it, which wouldn't make sense if you're an import loader. Let's see what the replies are. After briefly looking at the ACLs, I think your role is the role you need as well as import transformer. Try associating import transformer role with the user's profile as well as import set loader role. Good points, good points. I have a similar issue. I'm creating records via REST inbound service that I've created. The record creates, but the reply is missing the body unless I give the user the import admin role. It would be good to get some guidance on the minimum access we need to give an account to support importing data. I really don't want to give more access than I need and don't have time to pick through the tables manually. For that one, I would give them the ACLs needed to read and write the table if that's what you need. I don't think you need, well, unless they're doing import sets. They may be doing an import set API for REST, so I shouldn't generalize like that. That's best practice. Don't let them, if you're doing a REST API, don't write directly to the target table, especially if it's from a third party. Go to an import set. That way the import set can do the mapping, can do the transforms, all that good stuff that import sets give you. Do we want a primer on import sets? Just to clarify, I can create a record just by granting ACL access to the imports table. It's the lack of data in the response that's my issue. Okay. I love this picture on the import sets page. Where is it? Where is it getting? Where's like it getting started? This one, create a data source? No. Oh, please tell me it's still here. Release notes? No. Import set key concepts. Is this the one? Where's that big, beautiful picture? No. Maybe it's under data source. I'm going to find it. I'm going to find it. Data sources. Nope. All right, now I'm going to poke around here. Import sets, import set key concepts. Nope. Transform maps. There it is. Okay, this should be right up front. The import process transform. So there's a number of formats. This is a really old picture. I think this was made like circa 2005. But it tells a really good story. I'm going to blow that up just a little bit more. If you haven't done an import set before, they're very powerful. We give you a very flexible and configurable way to take info from a data source, whether that's an HTTP request via REST or SOAP, Excel, CSV, XML, whatever it is, these various inputs you've got here come into a staging table. This is called an import set table. You identify what that table is. The system will create the table and the fields automatically. Doesn't always get them 100% right. I'll give you a clue on that in a little bit, where it's burned me. But the import set table is really an image of the raw data that came in. So if I'm importing an Excel spreadsheet, for example, and it's got columns for first name, last name, title, and telephone number, perhaps, and I'm bringing that into the sys user table. The sys user table is my target table over here on the right. That's where I want the data to ultimately end up. But I don't want to take that Excel spreadsheet and put it directly into the sysuser table. There may be duplicates. There may be errors. There may be blank lines. There may be transformations I need to do in terms of the data. Maybe the phone number, not the phone number, but maybe the age in Excel for whatever, it has a decimal point on it, and my field for the age in the sysuser table is an integer. Okay, I'm going to have some issues there with data transformations. So that's where the transform comes in. And there's a couple pieces to the transform. One is a simple field mapping. If the label in Excel simply says first, then I take the first field and map it to the first name field in the sysuser table. So I can do this mapping and say this field goes here, that field goes there, on and on and on. I can also identify uniqueness in what we call coalesce fields. What is the key field that I need to match, or fields, if you prefer, that I need to match in order to identify uniqueness? If I'm importing CIs, maybe a MAC address is good enough if I have that information. And I say this is going from an Excel spreadsheet or SolarWinds or something else, and it's going into the import set table. And as long as if I have that same MAC address, or for a user, that email address, we'll use email as a unique factor. If I don't have an employee ID or something in my data, my Excel spreadsheet, I bring in an email address and I say, you know what? There's one and only one chuck.tomasi@servicenow.com in my user table. Therefore, if he's already there, I'm going to update that record. If he's not, I'm going to create a record. That's all coalesce does, is should I create or should I update? If you don't identify a coalesce field, it's going to create a record every time. And now I've got a new Chuck Tomasi, a new Chuck Tomasi, a new Chuck Tomasi. As I test this out and go, why do I have 5 Chuck Tomasis? Oh, I ran the imports at 5 times, but didn't identify something to coalesce on. Therefore, it's not updating anything, or even ignoring it to say, you know what, nothing changed. I'm not going to update that. That's the purpose of the transform, is to give you the mapping, the coalescing, the massaging capability to be able to turn an integer, a decimal into an integer, or a string into an integer, or something of that nature, so you can get this information right. When I was importing from a SQL database, the employee IDs had a leading 00 on them. But every employee, like the back of their badge, there was no leading 00. For example, it came out of the database for me as 00H330. I look at my badge, it says H330. So whenever somebody says, what's your employee ID? I stripped that off. I said, I don't need those 2 leading zeros. So the transform has scripting capabilities that you can run at various points during the transform process and put them in there. Now, the clue that I hinted at before, I should bring this instance back up because it hit me. I had it up there yesterday, and then I just put it away before the show started. I was doing an import last week, and the import set table does its best to figure out what that table should look like. It says, oh, column 1 is a name. It looks like it's about 40 characters wide. Let me look at system, imports, import sets. And here I have questions. Questions from the latest Tech Now episode came in here. And if I look at one of these records, here's the rows that were imported. I did a test import. It found a column in the spreadsheet called email. I put one in called episode so that it could match to the record and create a parent-child relationship. Even though this isn't a reference field, it will match it based on display value. We talked about that yesterday. Question, response time. The problem I had with some of these is that it would take the longest field value and use that for the length of the field. So if I say show u_question, this is my import set table, not my target table. My target table has a question and response field of 1,000 characters. But when the import set table was created, it said, oh, hey, you know what? The longest question anybody asked was 246 characters. So that's as long as I'll make the field. This max length was 246. I also ran into problems with the email. Email was topping out at 40 characters. I don't know why, because there were some emails that were about 43 characters. So you've got, in this case, let's say nate.engstrom at aptris. Nothing. Problem. The problem with truncated fields is I am trying to link this to a record in another table, just like I'm trying to link this with a record in another table. In fact, this may actually be too short. Let me look. U episode is 40. Yeah, the titles on that are going to be longer. I'm going to change that right now. Let's configure the dictionary. What I had to do is go in and say, your email field is too darn short. It's not realistic. The title of this show could be much longer. Think about what I just showed you on episode 54 that's coming up on July. Okay, save time and headaches with the ServiceNow script debugger. That's going to blow that 40 characters right out of the water. And then when I do the import, it's not going to be able to match that to an existing show name because it truncated it and it says, I don't have a show name like that. So I'm going to get it's a big old mess. So if you're doing import sets, do the import, then compare the import set field lengths with the target table field lengths. Email, too short. I am going to configure that one as well. Looks like I already did question an episode. This was just for a real simple test that I did. Okay, email is 100. I'm good with that. Even though it only displays a short field, if I put it down here in a wider format, it would show much longer. Response time, I have no problem with that. First name, last name, responded by. The form layout here are kind of wacky. We could fix that if you want, but I'm not going to bother with that right now. So for import sets, be sure when you do your first test import, I tested 20 records, go in and look, because you may not see it right away until you get fields later on in the record that are longer than that. And by that time, it's too late. The table's already been created, the fields have been created, and then it goes down further into your 1,000 or 10,000 records in your spreadsheet. And it goes, hey, you know what? The first 20, they all had short email addresses. 40 is all you need. Nah, bad idea. Because as soon as you get some of these longer names with longer domain names and subdomain names in them, you will run out of characters and those will be truncated, and then you have data import problems. And it's really hard to find those. Right? Why? What? It's fine in my spreadsheet. Why didn't it match it to the target table record? It's the cols field. Email, I need email to match this user with this record. And it doesn't work. So after your test import, go and check those field values. That should be a standard step. I don't know why that's not a best practice, but hey, free tip here today. You learned something about import sets. Go and check those field lengths after you do your initial test import. Wow, I can really get off on a tangent with one discussion. It's not even a developer question. I don't think I've had a developer question yet. We had HR, we had an ITSM, we got a discovery. Wow, crazy stuff all over the place. Let's do another refresh. I think I got time for one more. At that rate, I got time for half a question. Let's look. Custom PowerShell credential entry. That one is in ITOM. Transform map error pop-up for wrong reference field. Okay, that one is also integrations based. My specialty, if you haven't known, is integrations, custom applications, and the platform in general. So Michael Ritchie, whom I mentioned earlier, very bright individual, answered this a couple days ago. I'm using a transform map. If I insert a wrong reference field, it automatically creating a field in the table which belongs to a reference field. How can I avoid this? This is controlled by setting the individual field maps. If the target field is of type choice or reference, a setting called choice action will appear, allowing you to create, ignore, or reject. Say if the target field or reject the source data. So I believe by default it's create. So what you can do is, if you were looking at my example, and this was a reference to another record, it says, oh, this reference doesn't exist, or this show doesn't exist. What would you like me to do if I see a new one in this spreadsheet, which is now in the import set table? Would you like me to create a new record or skip over it, or what are we going to do with that? In your case, you have it set to create, which is default. Change to ignore if you just want to skip that setting, skip setting that field, or reject it if you want to reject the entire thing. Can't I see error pop up for him while uploading a wrong reference field? The answer is no. Unfortunately, no, because the import's happening in the background. You tell these things to run, and you don't sit there all week while the transform's running. It goes in the background so that you can go do something else. You can always create a report in dashboard to see that option. Good answer, Michael. That is helpful. I mark thee helpful. Michael and I used to be on the same team about a year ago. But roles change, lives change, we all go on. Okay, let's see if we can get one more in. I like that one. Good information, more good information about import sets. Good morning, Balaji. Good to see you. Look at the above posted question. Kindly look at the above posted question. I'm not seeing an above posted question. Did you put a link in it? Because YouTube rejects links. Check your chat transcript for that. How to call variables inside a macro. Is it best practice to retrieve records using SOAP? My best practice is to use REST. SOAP is gradually being phased out by a lot of providers. We are planning to integrate ServiceNow with Clarity. It is a one-directional integration. ServiceNow needs to fetch, retrieve all projects and all of its fields from Clarity. Clarity team has provided us a WSDL link to let us retrieve all projects and also the fields associated with it. Here's my question. Is if I were to write a SOAP message script in the scheduled job to retrieve all the projects and field values in it, this scheduled job will run every day one time. Will it create any performance issue? Is it best practice to retrieve the records and its values from an external system using SOAP web service and use it in a scheduled job? Personally, I would always edge towards using REST over SOAP. I agree with Paul. But they each have their place. This is a good post full of sound advice on the matter. Ooh, let's read that sound advice. Have you considered web service import sets? The huge advantage to using defined import set process used by ServiceNow and the ability to process import through transform apps. You can also schedule that to go off when you want. Thanks for the response. Clarity doesn't have REST service, so they are providing a SOAP WSDL endpoint. Now they are saying that retrieve all the required data using the SOAP endpoint. My question is, if I use the SOAP message script in a scheduled jobs, will it create a performance impact? Values will be imported to the external. It really depends on how much data you've got. Performance is really dependent on how much data you are importing. I also recommend using a defined data source, which you can schedule to run. This gives you the power. Actually, can you do SOAP from the data source? I'm going to leave that off. I'm not sure about that answer yet. Can you give us an idea of how many records you are processing? Have you done a test of this on a subset? I'd do that and calculate how long it takes to run and then estimate a full import based off the partial proportion. Example, if it takes 20 seconds to do 1,000 records and your total is 100,000 records, then you can estimate that it will take 100 times 20 seconds. Or, what is that? 100 times 20 is 2,000 divided by 60, about 33 minutes. Or about 33 minutes. Granted, your subprod instance is probably lesser horsepower than your prod instance. So prod will likely take less than 30 minutes. But no, users won't see the performance impact because there are dedicated processes, resources. I should have mentioned that. Oh well. How to copy a table structure to another instance. Is this thread still going? This was a while ago. I tried this, but it did not help me. What are we're still doing? You copy the table structure by an update set. I want to copy the table structure from the sysuser table to another table who extends import set row table. Still can't find a way to do it besides creating the column manually, or I must be getting something wrong because I want to create a staging table to copy data from REST to that table. So they're trying to do an import set of users. I'm still not clear. What is the ultimate goal? What is the overall business objective? Are you copying users from one instance to another? Adding a note to manage attachments. Michael Ritchie replied to my GS message thing and said, I didn't change his. My reply to his said, yeah, GS message is a good way to go. And he says, great suggestion. See, we're all friends. Sorry about that. Here's my question. Hi, I have defined a notification that's supposed to be triggered in an event, and the event is being triggered from business rule. Okay. I have a defined notification that's triggered by event, and the event is triggered from a business rule. Great example of that. If we go to incident events business rule, and you can see how that's done. That one is under business rule. This is where I learned all about, well, technically I learned it in sysadmin class in 2008, but the principle is still the same. If you go to business rules, there's one called incident events, and in there you will find that it is triggered after, it's either after or async. When does it run? It runs after the incident is updated or inserted, and it says, hey, what happened and what do I need to do? This is just a collection. This is a good practice rather than sticking an event in, having a lot of business rules that watch for events. But this is really the main hub of where notifications are triggered. It says, if this is not a new record, operation is not insert, and the comments change, then I'm going to trigger the event incident commented. If it is an insert, then I'm going to trigger issue inserted. Incident inserted. So you can see what it takes to trigger these. And in some cases, you may have multiple events triggered. It was assigned to somebody else and a comment was made. Those could be going to two different targets. We don't know. We'd have to go look at the notifications. So based on those events, that's where you would do that in a business rule. Just set a business rule on that table to trigger after the record has been updated, and it will fire off these events, and then the notification can be picked up by that. And in your notification, let's go see if we can find incident assigned. System notification, email notifications. There it is down there. And I'm just simply going to query this thing out, and event name incident.assigned. Run. There's a couple of them. Ooh, so one event, this is a cool thing about events. One event could trigger multiple notifications that are responding to that event. And these notifications could have conditions on them. This one in particular doesn't appear to have a condition. Yes, it does. Okay. So the event is going to come along. Apparently this one's been converted from an event triggered to a record triggered. Never mind. Maybe nobody's using this event anymore. Sure enough. Even though the record is defined, I said event is incident.assigned, it's not being used. Is there any harm in having these events going into the queue and nobody servicing them? No. You can do that. I don't know why you would, but if in this case your process changes, originally that was the only way you could trigger emails until about 2010 or 11, I remember, when this record inserted or updated option came along in notifications, made it much easier to just say, I'm going to write a notification. I don't need to bother myself with all this event garbage. It just watch for these records to change. Much like business rules are watching, the notifications are watching too. It says, oh, I see you updated a record. What are the conditions that I need to watch for to do that? You could also, as I've done in the past, use notifications with an event and a condition. Now, you change this field. In fact, if I change this field, you can see it's probably still going to be set to that. Change it from record inserted or updated. Sorry, I clicked before the form was done loading. Record inserted or updated to event triggered. This is incident.assigned to group. Slightly different event, but you could use this event and then do further filtering. For example, incident.updated may trigger an email, but I could trigger multiple emails and say, hey, the event was updated. Let's trigger the French email if the caller's language is French. Let's trigger the German email if the caller's language is German. That sort of thing. So I can send the right language in that way. So a little bit about events and business rules and notifications. Don't know if there's a whole lot of people that still use them that way, but they're still available. And that takes us past the top of the hour. You get bonus minutes today. It is a Friday. I wish you all the best very weekend. If you are just starting your day, good luck. Have a wonderful day. If you've learned something today, make sure you click that like button on YouTube so that others can find it. And I wish you, again, best weekend. Have a great time. Go out there, teach somebody, show somebody something cool that you've learned either here today or in the past. To go, wait, I got to show you this. Or if they ask a question, you go, oh, yeah, I just learned that. Okay. Have fun, and I'll take care. Bye. Have a good weekend.